Hey, everybody. Thank you for taking the time and joining me today. And apologies if you hear a little bit of a dog barking in the background. Hopefully, I can talk a little bit louder than he can bark. um, I want to introduce myself, and I'm excited to have an opportunity to join another virtual craft brewers conference here, and so again, huge shout out to Andrew, not just for putting this on, but for everything that he's done with this group, and with events like this. They're awesome to be a part of and witness, and it's just such a great group. My name is Devon Hoffman. I am a digital marketing specialist here with SiteSeeker, and you can see my email up there on the screen. If at any point you ever have any questions or looking for some info or insights, I'm always happy to help out brewers and breweries, however and as frequently as I can. And that's really one of the great ways that I like to be involved in groups and present for topics like this, because outside of working in the digital marketing space, breweries are my hobby. Visiting them, checking them out, trying new beers, seeing the experience and the ambiance. And in a previous job, I worked as a gift shop and tour center manager at a brewery here in upstate New York, which gave me the ability to kind of see where the two circles of this brewery and marketing Venn diagram can overlap, and where I always feel like there's some opportunity. And that kind of brings me to the topic that I thought would be fitting for today, which is online advertising for breweries and the do's and don'ts. Just at a very high level for the reasoning behind that. I'm a true believer when it comes to digital marketing that advertising is one of the most powerful branches of that, because it is the way that you can put your brand in front of new people. You can put your messaging, your image, your name in to the top of the page in front of the people that you're looking for. The thing is, it comes at a cost. You're advertising, you're either paying for click or you're paying for impressions. And so what can happen sometimes is it's quantity over quality. And the way that people will set programs up is just to cast a really, really wide net. And while that might be good from an impression standpoint, it's not really the best utilization of your money. And in the end, you could make the determination that the program is not working because you're not seeing the results either you wanted or you expected, and could potentially write off online advertising. And so depending on the what, depending on the who, the where, all sorts of questions like that, there are ways you can truly optimize an advertising program to really work for you. So what I really want to touch on is to kind of talk about, when we talk about online advertising, where are we talking about? What are we talking about? And then in terms of do's and don'ts is really understanding what your objectives are, because that should be the driving factor. And what I want to do, is kind of then separate from just an information dump on you, and actually show you how you can set a campaign or set an ad up. And for the focus of today, just being mindful of time, I want to look at Google advertising, because so frequently we see that maybe through a little bit of trial and error, people have figured out how to create a quality ad program for themselves within social media, but don't really know what Google advertising looks like, where it means, what they can do with it. So I feel like that's a good place to kind of just do some highlighting in some some demoing there. So in any case, what I'm going to do, wrong screen, is kind of to start this off. There's two areas that I see um, as ideal to sort of start this conversation, and that's getting into the where. And so when I say placements, that's what I'm kind of referring to, the where, and then also what to keep in mind. So the considerations when identifying, your advertising plan. So placements is pretty straightforward. And I've got them kind of separated into two categories here, which is social media and Google properties, Google advertising. And so social media, you can see, for example, we've got Facebook, we've got Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. And then for Google, there's Google Ads, Google My Business, and YouTube, which I'll get into in a little bit. And I think that this is a good starting place in seeing, the different logos up there in the visual, because in previous but also recent conversations in brewery panels and discussions, one of the questions that comes up is, where should I be advertising, and should I be on everything? And the answer is maybe eventually, but for now, no. You really want to make sure that you're happy with the performance of one before you branch out into another. And this is just a subset. I'm going to jump out of this presentation here and open up. And those of you who have attended presentations I've done in the past have probably seen this, but we had put together this graphic that's a play on the many different types of beer, which is the many different types of digital marketing, and for breweries specifically. And so, social media can branch into different topics, but I want to look up here primarily for today, which is the advertising, because beyond just those logos I was showing before, you can advertise on Snapchat, you can advertise on Amazon, Bing, streaming tools like Pandora and Spotify. You can get into additional display options. And so there's so many different areas that you can do advertising as a part of digital media that it can become overwhelming. So the best bet is to identify where it makes the most sense to start, and and really build something that's beneficial or optimized or successful for you there. Well, you're going to say, well, where should I start? Which one makes sense? And this is where we kind of get into the do's and the don'ts. And so in that case, the don't is, say, I want to try $100 ads on every platform that exists and see which one performs best. Because then the questions would be, well, what are you advertising? The short answer is your brewery, but that's too short of an answer. So we need to determine, what are we trying to communicate? And so that's why I kind of then say, let's look over here at considerations. And so the first thing is, what are the goals? And I know a lot of times people are like, listen, I want it to be successful. I want it, to generate sales. And but really the best starting place is kind of defining those sales. And so I've got 3 bullets here. It can definitely branch out further than that. But there's awareness, there's sales, and there's events. And so an example of that is if you're opening a second location, or if you're opening, or if you're expanding your tap room, or if there's something that you want to communicate, or maybe it's just, I want people to know we've been here for a year and I just want more people to know about it. You might want to focus on awareness ads. If I see a new brewery pop up in my area, I'll try and make a point within the next couple of days to make a trip there. From awareness, you get into sales. And so what are we looking at in terms of sales? Well, are you in an area that direct to consumer distribution is available? Here in New York, it isn't currently. But maybe you're in a state where you can do that. Or if you're in New York, maybe you're trying to push merchandise sales, or growler kits or something along those lines, ingredient kits, where maybe it's not the alcohol itself, but there's something that you can do an online sale of. Or we get into events. We're on the backside or in the middle, depending on how you look at it, of Oktoberfest season. And so a lot of people might be promoting their version of Oktoberfest. And so one of the first things you really want to understand is, what is my goal? Because your goal is going to dictate a couple of things. Your goal is going to dictate the placement. And so, I look at this and my mind kind of goes to LinkedIn. Is LinkedIn going to make sense as a place to promote your Oktoberfest? From an advertising standpoint, probably not. But if your goal is to get, a new brewer for your team, then LinkedIn actually might make more sense. But if you're trying to promote your Oktoberfest, as an example, then yeah, let's look at what is available within Facebook. Let's look at what's available inside of Instagram. So one of the things that we see as a mistake is just going back to that too broad of advertisement, where it's like I want an ad and I want to see how it performs, but there's really no goal. The goal is to see if the ad was successful. And so if you kind of take that approach, um, by the end of it, there isn't a tangible, uh, criteria to identify success by. So that's one of the first things you want to do is kind of determine, okay, I want to get into advertising, but what is the goal? And because the other thing that that's going to play into is, determining your budget. If your goal is, let's say we're coming up on holiday shopping season, and so around that Thanksgiving into Black Friday weekend, followed up by Cyber Monday, there's so much opportunity there to generate online sales. So if you've got a goal of what you're trying to generate in terms of online sales, then you can say, I might have $500, $1,000 of an advertising budget I'm willing to use. And where does it make most sense to utilize that? Could be Facebook, could be Instagram. And that kind of brings you then into the next most important part of this, which is targeting. And the reason for that, and this is where, you can see we've got a couple broken out bullets here: location, demographic, sociographics, which I'll get into that in a little bit. But the reasoning behind this is where we see the majority of misutilized advertising spend. And that could be the lowest hanging fruit, especially on something like Facebook or Instagram, is going to be to try and push alcohol related advertising to all ages. It won't be accepted. It'll probably be, immediately rejected. But depending on your notifications or your email, we've worked with partners in the past who, their Facebook was set up with that I don't want to worry about it, spam email. And they were just trying to do way too broad of a targeting inside of Facebook. Their ads were getting rejected and they actually didn't know it. They never really realized it. So right off the bat, that's something that you want to, plan for. But I can also take that a step further to say, again, this is going back to those goals. Maybe you're trying to push Cyber Monday sales. What is the item you're boosting? You know what I mean? If you're using an image of a product you're trying to sell around that time, what is it? And then what's the demographic beyond just being 21 that's most likely to be interested in that? And the answer could be 45 plus. The answer could be 25 to 45. And so answers to those questions is going to kind of help you with that targeting. Additionally, we've seen where people will just have such a wide range of where their ads are running. And it's great to get as many eyes as possible on some of those. But unless it's awareness, if you don't have the brand exposure yet, you are not necessarily going to capture people when they scroll through that, especially around the holiday time, which is such a busy, merch push within social media advertising or Google advertising for that. So if I'm scrolling through, as much as I'd love to visit any of your breweries that are, tuning in, but if I don't know it, if I don't know your brewery and you might be a West Coast brewery, I might not be as positioned to buy a hoodie from you as somebody within that 150-mile radius. So that's where you really do want to look at location. And the same goes for demographic. So again, I want to kind of keep circulating examples here So maybe not so much with sales, but let's talk about events. We've had partners who have done, um, ladies' nights at their facilities, and they really want to push it. They want to promote it. They want to get the word out there. Well, you can sort of target that it's primarily those ads are being positioned, displayed, presented to women, because they're going to be the most logical attendee or recipient, to engage with that particular ad. And so, it's sort of a combination, especially as you get into setup, of understanding, who do I really want to see this? What do I really want them to see? And what is my goal at the end of the day with putting this ad in front of them? And then kind of coming into messaging, that's where we sort of get into the what are we showing? What are we sharing? Um, this is such a dynamic industry in terms of the mediums by which we can uh, engage with people. The main ones you'll think of are going to be photo and video. So I want to see a little bit of that ambiance, so it prepares me for an experience if I'm coming to visit. Or if we're talking about merchandise, I want to see a picture of the shirt or the hat, or I want to see someone wearing the hat and say that's my style. Um, and so to understand what type of content I want to utilize, this is where we really have now the most placement crossover in terms of options, because when we're looking at something like a Google ads, there are a couple different ways that Google ads can be displayed and render, and what is most logical is going to depend on which goal I'm really trying to push. And so here's where I'm going to just kind of jump back out of this, and I'm going to kind of show you what I'm talking about and go into Google. So this is just, everyday Google. And so I'm just going to search for brewery. And again, this is based on, where I'm searching from in upstate New York. And so this listing layout that we have here is to be expected, but there's kind of like a very high level, almost definition of brewery over here to the right. And then because typically if you're searching for breweries, you're looking to find one or engage. So then you get into the map, the location based results. But if I scroll under this, now we're getting into these actual organic results that we see up here. And so currently around me in my area, nobody is running brewery related ads within Google that are targeting the keyword or phrase brewery. But what I want to then go a little step further, because this typically brings some ads, is brewery tours. And so plural it. That's not brewery. Let's see, beer tour. All right. Well, I might switch it to let's see, brew home brewing. Yeah, okay. So just to kind of showcase an example of where advertising comes into play, if I search here for home brewing, there's two types of ads that are showing up. We've got shopping ads that you can see up here at the top, and then we've got search ads, which you can see right here, the more beer and the home brewing supplies. Then we get into organic results. How do you know which is which? Just where it says ad here. I'm not going to click on any of these, but this is where we get into Google. This is known as cost per click or pay per click. So if I was to click this ad, more beer would pay Google for that click. How much would they pay Google? It varies. You actually bid, those on those clicks, and it can range anywhere from 30 cents to $100. Depending on the competition within a space. If there's more competition, the price goes up. One of the examples when I had searched previously, but it's not showing today, maybe I can try an incognito, was when I searched brewery tour. Yeah, it's not showing up. But when I searched brewery tour previously, it was more national uh, tour agencies that would say tour these breweries in Germany. Or, maybe with where I am, it would be a Vermont brewery tour that was trying to get me, to plan a trip there. And so these are search ads, and you can set these up, and you get a title, you get a description, and you can drive people to your website. As I was saying before, this industry probably relies a little bit more on the visual medium, where search ads wouldn't resonate as much. As you saw, there's not as many for breweries running within my area here. And that's probably unsurprising, because you're not necessarily going to engage with the search. You want to see the location, you want to see the experience, the beers, things like that. Well, that's when Google has other opportunities in advertising that make either a little bit more sense or can resonate a little bit more. And so one of those, just to kind of keep it in Google, so I'll go back to search for brewery, and we've got this map here. And you can actually see near me, one brewery is running a Google Maps ad. So right here, this one, back square, does have a map ad running. So if I was to click on their listing, it would um, it would come at a cost to them. But as you can see, it's brought their listing, when I search for breweries and look at a map, to the top of my page here. And so multiple businesses can do that. And, there can be other ads listed. But this is a big opportunity to capture some of that awareness, or tourism traffic, or traveling traffic. It's something I've in it probably sounds like a broken record if you've attended something I've presented on before, but one of the really most powerful tools for a brewery is your Google My Business listing, because especially for a person like me who likes to find new breweries when I'm traveling, I'm starting with Google, and I'm saying breweries near me, or specifically breweries in this city in Michigan, or something along that line. And so I don't have an opportunity, and you can see right here around me in central New York, there's a fair number of breweries, and some of them are relatively close, and some of them are within an hour. But if I only have the opportunity to visit one or two, I might be in a position that I am just picking the top option. And these types of ads are accomplished through the same ad manager that Google has, where those search ads are accomplished. And all you have to do is integrate your Google My Business listing, which I hope you all have claimed and have admin access to, um, with your Google Ads account. And once you do that, just as you can set again a budget for ads to show up in Google Maps, um, within a preset. If we go back to the considerations within a preset location, where those things can show. And within Google, we typically talk about three types of direct Google advertising. So search is one, which we saw on the search listing. Maps is two, like we're looking at here. And the third one is display. And display is definitely where there's a lot of opportunity for um, for you to communicate your brands, your products, and everything there really is to know about your brewery, or again, whatever the goal you're looking to communicate is. And so, display ads are shown through third-party Google properties, and it's all kind of comes down to size. So I'm just going to go to a random page that I know uses Google properties, and that'd be ESPN.com. And so when this page loads, we've got a ad up here, and we've got an ad right here. And if I refresh that, we're likely going to see 2 different ads pop up. In this case, we didn't. So if I actually go into maybe an article, we're going to, here we have an ad for Michael's. Scroll down. Here we have an ad for a car. You know what I mean? And so as you go through, these are display placements that we're seeing. Another good one that shows, a good spread is on the Weather Channel. And so this size ad is known as a billboard. But this is an Amazon ad that's got a placement in there. This is known as a vertical billboard. There's a VRBO one here. It could fill this whole space up. And so these are display ads. And the reason I say that display ads have so much opportunities for breweries is you can do 2 different types. Simply put, you can do 2 different types. You can do static or you can do responsive. And what we're looking at here is an example. Well, when we were looking at it, what we were looking at with that Amazon one was static. That was just an image. And if you clicked anywhere in that image, it would bring you to Amazon. What we're looking at here in this VRBO one is a responsive one. If I was on a different layout sizing, maybe Find Family Getaways nearby would be one line. VRBO might drop to the bottom. The call to action might come up to the top. It's responsive based on this positioning that's available. And that's why we tend to promote or like or go with those responsive display ads, because depending on the sizing that's available on a particular site or on a particular placement, you'd have the ability to have an ad that works, just kind of set for different sizing. So what can you provide? Well, you can provide, some images or even video, the text, the copy, your logo, things like that. And what'll happen is, depending on the placement and depending on the performance of the ads in the past, Google will make the determination that it's going to pull this image and this text and this button, and it's going to make an ad for you. But it's possible that, no 40 people see the same ad. It can fluctuate. It's responsive. And that's really where the name comes in there. And that kind of brings, and I'm going to jump back to here before I get into Google itself. That's where it kind of circles back into, these considerations, and also talking about placement, because the goal of this, the biggest do, is have the most efficiency possible. Maximize your spend, not just from an advertising standpoint, but from a time investment standpoint. And what I mean by that is, an example is, let's say you're creating a video. Through Google advertising, you can have that video be a YouTube ad. But maybe you want to cut that video down, shorten it, and leverage it as a responsive Google display ad. And if you're going to do that effort to make it a responsive Google display ad, maybe it can also be a Facebook ad. And so, again, it all comes down to finding where you're utilizing these platforms, efficiently for you, and you're seeing, positive, responses to them. But when you get to a certain point where you do want to start to branch into other placements, try and maximize the content as much as you can. And that also goes for that kind of similarity or that comfortability on the part of the consumer, the customer who's receiving this ad. Because if I see an ad on YouTube, maybe I didn't consciously recognize it, but then if I do see it again later on Facebook, or maybe a third time, on a third party placement, now I'll start to remember, start to capture, that content, or that messaging. So with that, what I want to do is jump back in, and specifically for this presentation, I created a brand new Google Ads advertising account, leveraging a make-believe brewery that a friend of mine and I created because we were home brewing back in 2020, and people said, "Oh, like you need to name your brewery," as we did it. So we called ourselves 2KB Brewing, and so just from an inside joke standpoint, but for the purpose of showing you from a fresh, a fresh layout, I threw together a one pager fake site that just is the logo and says coming soon. So there's a destination, and created a Google Ads account. If you ever do want to get into um, creating a Google Ads account, if you don't already have one, the trick is going to be just to go to ads.google.com. And then you just say sign in or start now if you don't currently have one. And that's really all you have to do to start. If you have a Google My Business account and you're using the email associated with that Google My Business account, and that'd be my advice to start, it'll ask if you want to link or leverage the information from that My Business account to create your new account. And the reason you want to do that is one, it's faster for you, but two, you've now already actually created that linkage with your My Business account for maps already. That's already set. In my case, I couldn't do that because I don't have a Google My Business account for my fictitious brewery. But I did create one, and this is an important point to bring up two things. One is the opportunities or benefit to creating an account if you don't already have one. So if you've kind of been thinking about it, maybe I want to try it, I'm not sure. So Google typically will, for lack of a better term, incentivize you to create an account and to try it, and to get on the platform. And so sometimes they'll offer $300 in advertising, to start out with. But in this case, and like essentially all I did was sign in with my Gmail and say I wanted to create an account and put some of the particulars in there. And it offered me $500 match. And so what that means is if within a certain window, and I believe it's either a month or 2 months, if I spend $500 in advertising within my Google Ads account, it will match and give me $500 of credit to work with. And so let's just say I want to use $500 as a budget for the month. My second month could be free. And so if you don't have a Google Ads account and you were to set one up, you'd very likely be positioned for a similar or the same incentive. The second part of that is what's known as Google Ads Express. And this is what very well could be, I want to try Google Ads. Devon rambled for 45 minutes, and I really didn't catch a lot of what he was saying. So I don't really know how to create the campaign like he was talking about. When you start, it'll actually give you the option to go through what's called Google Ads Express. That is a very user-friendly and Google guided process of creating a campaign. So you say, this is my objective, or this is my goal, or here's where I am, or this is what I want to do. And it'll create that campaign for you. And it's more of that sort of drag and drop that we see in some different online builders. But for the purpose of, a from campaign creation in this back end, I wanted to actually kind of walk through that without using the Express, but just know that option exists if you're just trying to, crawl before you can walk, sort of thing. But so this is what we're seeing. This is the back end of Google Ads. Again, this is a faux account. I will note that I did, when you set up your Google Ads account, it will ask for a credit card that you'll put it on, and that'd be the card used for billing. Google does billing at two times. There's threshold billing and then monthly billing. And so, let's say my budget is $1,000 for the month. That's what I want to start off with on Google. Once I hit $500, it'll charge my card. And or on the first of a month, it'll charge wherever that balance is at. So let's say I'm at $372 on November 1st. It's going to charge me that $372. But then if I hit $500 on November 18th, it'll charge me again then. So just so you know, going into it, how that billing works. But from in here, what I want to do is create a new campaign for my Make Believe Brewery. And then it gives me the opportunity to say, well, what's the focus? What do I want to look at? And what changes from as we go through these different ones? So some of them are going to be map focused, some of them are, for reach. But really, what you're controlling here is what Google's AI and the algorithms is the key word when it comes to things with Google, what it should be keeping in mind, what it should be focused on. And so you've got sales, lead, traffic. And so you can see down here and saying, well, what's the conversion? What's the goal of this? And here is where you would want to, pick what action is most logical for you. But to track it, you'd want to integrate with your Google Ads account. And so I'm not going to get into that only because I don't have Google Ads for the company I'm using as an example for this. But there's, if you're ever interested in making that connection or setting that up, you can surely email me, and I can share what the steps are. So what I want to do is I'm just going to bypass that for the sake of building this. And I'm going to say that I want to create a display campaign. And so you can see some of the different examples here that we were talking about. A video, if you want to go on YouTube, search. So we're going to just create a display campaign. And so I'm going to say continue. And so one of the things it wants to know is what's my business's website. So I'm going to use this one that I threw together. And then what do I want the campaign name to be? So I'm going to name it 2KB 2022 display ads. So here is, again, going back to that doc on, so you can see it's trying to push me into the Ads Express, but I'm going to ignore it and say leave. This is when it goes back to what we were looking at in that deck in terms of the considerations. And so targeting is one of those considerations. So right now, this is defaulted to target all countries and territories. So if I just kind of continued through this, it would have my breweries ads global. Probably not a lot of, benefit to me on the spend there. Probably not, as useful a spread. So what I want to say is no, and I don't even necessarily want US and Canada or all of US. That's probably going to be way too broad. So what I want to do is go for my area. Now there's two types here. So if I typed in Utica, and you can even see sometimes it gives, DMA information. So I want to, if I said, hey, I want to target Utica, New York, that would specifically target this area. And you can see like where the impressions show and things like that. But I might not want specifically just Utica. So you can go to an advanced search and say, you can see how it's like blocked all around here. I'm going to do a radius. And so maybe I'm located in Utica, New York, but I want to target 35 miles. That's a reasonable distance for people to travel to find me. So now I'm targeting 35 miles around Utica. And I can save that. Similarly, I could make the case that I want to exclude a certain area. I'm not going to do that for now, but let's say I wanted to target the area around Utica, but actually exclude Utica itself or something along those lines. You can just accomplish that by clicking exclude. Continuing with that targeting, you then can identify how do you want Google to think of that location you just identified. So you can either do it where it's people in or regularly in, or who have shown interest in your targeted location, or people in or regularly in your targeted location. I know it says recommended of those who have shown interest, um, but I typically go with the people in or regularly in, because shown interest can be very broad. Um, and so it can really open that targeting up well beyond what you'd like it to be. And so the same for people in, if you're excluding, just keep it to people excluding. So for this language, I'm going to keep it with English. So now we can even get in a little bit more into some of the specifics. Again, you could just click next and get into ad creation. But when we talk about, the do's and don'ts, one of the don'ts is, um, you know, lack that efficiency in that ad. So you really want to be able to control as much as you can. So I'm going to say, okay, I'll let the system optimize the best performing ads, but I don't want my ads running all day. So I want my ads running Monday to Friday from, let's say, 10 to 11, and Saturdays and Sundays from 12 to midnight. And maybe the goal there is to capture, um, people who are looking for something to do if we're pushing an event or something along those lines. So now I don't have my ads showing to people that are on websites, at 4:17 in the morning that might not be as valuable. You can also put some refinement into devices. So just to show you, devices are sort of broken down by computers, mobile phones, and tablets. I'm not going to control any of these up front, but it is helpful to go back as your ads start to run and see maybe where performance is doing well. And then, getting into the rest of these, and they're good to play around with, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to say I don't want to make any adjustments to these. So now I want to jump forward, and now we're into budget. So the way that Google works in its budgeting is the budget that you set, and you can see it says set your average daily budget for this campaign. It will ensure that at the end of a month, the average on a daily basis comes out to be what you're identifying here. But it is possible, depending on engagement or usage, that it spends more today versus tomorrow versus yesterday. It'll never spend more than double your budget in a given day, or if it does, you won't be charged for the double your budget. But that's how you can kind of identify. So let's say I have a budget of $500 for the month. I'm going to say 500 divided by 30.3 because that's mapped out. So 1650 would be my daily budget. I'm going to say, okay, 1650 is my daily budget. I want to focus on high quality traffic, and I want it to maximize the traffic versus manually setting bids. I don't want to get into manually setting bids, so I'll just work with that. So now we're going to get into targeting. And this is up to this point, you're probably like, well, search makes sense because you've got keywords, but how are people seeing my ad on ESPN or the Weather Channel or any of those? And so the answer is by identifying audiences. So you can do that by keywords. So I can go in here and develop a list of keywords and say brewery tour, craft beer, and then it'll determine people who are, a relevant fit for this ad. And you probably are starting to piece together. This is probably where you remember, oh wait, I search for something on Google, and then later I see, the ad as I'm on a different website. This is how those types of things are identified. I can also then go from those two keywords. I can do an audience segment, so I can say craft beer. And so thinking too much. So let's say brewery beer. So here's where you can like find the interest. So if you're getting into food, so it's a little bit less beer related specifically. So I don't want to wait too long to have it uh, try and sort through all the options. But here's where you can kind of identify those audience based on people's interests. And so you can build out all these different targeting types to see who's going to make the most sense to be a fit. And then placements is very strong because I know before we looked at ESPN and the Weather Channel, and so it might be the question of, well, where does it show up? Do I want it on the Weather Channel? Maybe not. You can actually pick what sites your ads do or do not show up on, as long as we can identify that they've got those partner placements. And so you can go with specific YouTube channels, and so maybe there's a home brewer channel that a lot of people like, or maybe you want to look at certain websites that are going to be a fit for whatever it is you're trying to promote. Here's where you can really control that. Another option is after you launch, if you don't really define this and it's got more broad targeting, you can go in and remove those that you don't necessarily want that traffic on, and you can say, oh, I wouldn't have thought of this site, but I'm glad now it's a part of that capture. Then you get into the ads themselves. And so I'm going to go real quick and just say, 2KB Brewing. And I'm going to add, I'm going to upload some pictures I had come up with beforehand that I just are stock photos that I downloaded. And so if I click into it, there's two ways I can use it. There's this horizontal option, and then there's the square option. So I might say that way's better. Select the two of those. Same for this. I might want to center it, and just imagine this is people at your brewery. And so now I'm going to save it. So it's going to populate that in there. I also want to add my logo. So I'm going to say, perfect. There it is. And it's cropping it a little bit more. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to unset that. And I've got a square version ready to go. And so now here is an example of the layout of my site. Not a lot of information. Well, that's all identified down here. And so you can see there's character limits. And so I could say, Brewery in Central New York. That's too long. So Central NY. Craft beer. Good times. Music. Events. Again, you can definitely work with things that resonate, more. But so now what this is doing is it's taking those things and it's saying, here's the image from the inside, here's the logo. The word description is just because that's what this says here. And so, stop down today, and so it's it's giving all these different types. Like I said, it's creating different formats for you to take a look at. This is mobile. You also have the option for desktop, how they're going to piece them together, but using your messaging, your logo, your imagery. It probably resonate a little bit more. this is also an opportunity to talk about limitations. We talked before about age. There are limitations when it comes to alcohol within Google advertising. Now, just having alcohol be a part of Google advertising is allowed in the United States. There's some countries where it's not. But what you can't do is show alcohol as while someone's operating equipment or machinery. So it can't be someone in a car, which is logical. You can't, say that it'll improve, your, make you more fun or more popular or anything like that. You can't say, like a beer a day keeps the doctor away. Things to be expected. The are, but for the most part, the standard messaging you probably go with, you'd be in a position to be able to move forward with. And once you've kind of identified, and like I was saying, you can add up to 5 headlines and you can add up to 5 descriptions like you see here. And so all these combinations that it's doing is generating all these different ads. So let's say the focus we wanted to go after was going to be to highlight merchandise. So you want to just target maybe 30 miles around your brewery. Most people probably know you, might be, interested in getting some new merch from you for the holiday season or as a gift for someone else. So now you've got these images of, you can add up to 15. Maybe you've got 7 different key pieces you want to showcase and you've got just the image or, a style shot where it's on someone. And then you highlight, new merch in, buy online, free shipping, those types of things. And so when it combines all those things in these responsive ads, you're creating a more and more desire or urgency for somebody to engage with it. And that's kind of how you can build out, responsive ads in that sense. And then once you kind of say, hey, okay, I'm happy with that, I can create that ad. You also have the ability, you're not locked in to do these responsive ones. You can do those static ones, like we saw that Amazon one. So there's different sizes, just Google, Google display ad sizing, and you can create different static ads. If you're like, I actually just want it to look like this every time, this is what I want people to see, and you can just upload them. And then all you do in that case is you put what the URL you want to push them to is, and you're golden. And then from here, you just say, okay, here's all the details of this campaign that I've pieced together, where it's going, what my campaign name is, everything like that. So my targeting is too narrow because I had 3 keywords in a 30-mile radius that were brewery and craft beer. So as you build out those audiences where it's like the interests and things like that, then you can go from here and say, okay, I want to publish my campaign. I'm not going to do that because this is not a real brewery that I want to start pushing ads on people out to. But once you start running an ad, now you've got so much opportunity to kind of go in when you're back on the, I'll save this for later. When you're back in this window, as they start to run, you can see how many clicks you have. You can see how many impressions, what your cost is. And then you can start to, get into the nitty gritty and look at placements and say, I want to change the websites this is showing up on. I want to adjust, these different items. And so just to kind of jump back, like I was saying, if you don't have Google Ads set up, it's definitely worth just signing in, seeing what, incentives might exist for you to kind of start some of those items out with. And then, really, can't stress enough, the best approach, the biggest do is going to be identify what your goal of an advertising campaign is digitally first. Because once you've identified that, let's say the example I said earlier, I want to get people to my Oktoberfest. Okay, then let's think of my targeting. Where does it make sense to target those ads? Who does it make sense to see those ads? What's the messaging? Did you do one last year? Share video, share image, or go back up here. If my goal is that I want to get sales, then you're going to say, okay, I want to get into who do I, want to target for those sales? Probably local again, who demographics, things like that. And the sociographics is how we target those audiences. If I'm interested in beer, I'm going to see those ads. So with that, I hope this was helpful. I've been stuck about half of this beer, so I'll take a sip there. This was great. I think I ran a little bit over. Um, as always, big shout out to Andrew for putting this on and the group. Hopefully, this was helpful, to anyone to learning other opportunities with advertising. If at any point, as always, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my email. I'm always happy to jump on a call or help out how I can. And I hope the rest of the conference and any drinks you have tonight goes well. So big time shout out and thanks again for the time. See you.